Have you ever had the thought of why does a studio accept a project they can't even handle? Why do they really want to ruin an anime that I really love? Why don't give it to MAPPA? Why don't give it to Ufotable? Why must this X studio take on the anime that I love and ruin it just like that? Today we will dive deep into the cruel reality of the anime industry behind the scene, why studio accepts so many projects, and why your favorite anime is getting these type of adaptation. Yes, this is the second part of yesterday's video. I didn't really have the time to edit it afterwards, so I decided to make it a standalone video. So yes everyone, without further ado, don't forget to subscribe and like, and let's get straight into the video. Who is actually really at fault? Is it JC Stuff or is it the production committee? Well, let's talk about it. So first of all, let's take a look at the first point, which is who decides the conditions. It's pretty much rare for a studio to decide when a show starts, how much time they get, or even what resources they will use. Those decisions are made by the production committee, a group of companies that are responsible on funding the anime. The studio can choose to accept or reject a project, but sometimes rejecting isn't even an option, especially if it's a big IP like One Punch Man. So yes, JC Stuff accepted One Punch Man, but under conditions that were already decided above them. There is a big difference between accepting a job because you want to, in terms of you want it to become a passion project, and accepting it because you have no choice. The anime industry is filled with tight deadlines, and studios often take on projects back to back just to survive. This is similar to what happened with Blue Lock. The studio could handle it, but when you have to go from a season to a movie to another season with no rest, burnout, and stuff drops out are inevitable. It's not a matter of laziness. It's mostly because of the schedule that suffocates the stuff behind the scene. And if you compare that to Tengoku Daimakyo by Production IG, there the production committee actually gave them extra time and literally allowed full creative freedom. As a result, look at this, and look at this. I would say this is personally one of my favorite anime at the time it was released. And yes, that's the difference when a committee actually listens to the studio. Yuji Matsukura, JC Stuff's head of production, once admitted that he wanted another anime they were making at the same time, Score Girls, to be hand animated in 2D with higher quality. But because back then One Punch Man was on the schedule, they had to cut back on resources and use more CG for Score Girls, and it ended up looking like this. That right there shows how one's project's pressure can bleed into another, and it's not about incompetence, and it's about the overload. So what really determines an anime quality? According to Shuhei Yabata, director of Vinland Saga, TV stations or streaming platforms don't decide anime quality. Yes, everyone knows that. And even creative studios can't fully control it. If an anime turns out amazing, it's usually because of fortunate encounters between passionate creators. And that's the hard truth. There's no system guaranteeing quality. It's pure luck and passion meeting a manageable schedule. And also, Yabata also mentioned that budget isn't the deciding factor. Even with a big budget, you can't ensure top quality if your schedule is bad or your stuff pool is limited. Basically, anime production is like a talent war. Studios compete for skilled animators and no amount of money can buy passion. Now, a lot of people ask who are the actual villain here? While the production committee do control the funding and schedules, they are still cautious about creative risks that could harm the brand. But they rarely micromanage how a studio execute things. That means quality depends heavily on how much time and how much creative control a studio is given. And this is the unfortunate case because sadly, most committees prioritize deadlines and merchandise over artistic breathing room. So when people say Nanatsu no Taizai fell off because the studio suck, that is only half true. It's more about awareness and control. If a committee sets an impossible schedule, the studio just does its best within that limitation. And the sad part, even if the anime succeeds, studios often earn nothing extra. Unless they are in the actual production committee itself, the money goes back to the higher up while the animators move on exhausted. A popular question that people will ask, why don't studios just say no to impossible deadlines, or why they didn't just reject anime that they possibly cannot handle? A good answer to that is basically they can't afford to. Remember that the studio has a certain contract to work on X anime for X period of time until X season of the anime itself. While these stuff are being decided behind the scene by the anime producer, even probably the studio CEO, and also the representative of production committee that is funding the anime. So if this studio just declined to work on this anime just because of the production is bad, then you should start saying goodbye to your source of income for this studio. Alright, so this is Future Easy Core talking. So while I'm editing this video, I didn't realize I didn't actually emphasize on how struggling it is or why rejecting offers from production committees are actually really challenging. So here I have a graph that shows annual profit in anime industry from 2002 to 2015, in which that small yellow bars represent the tiny portion of profits that actually go to the studios. Yes, the majority of revenue, including merchandise and distribution rights, is controlled by the production committee since they hold the IP licenses. Because of this, studios have to be strategic and in many cases have to accept these offers to stay financially afloat and also to ensure their own survival in the anime industry. If they are not part of the production committee, they often receive very limited profits, which can lead to underpaid and overworked animators who have to push themselves to meet deadlines just to complete each episode. And in other words, while taking on more projects can lead to overwork and really poor working condition for the anime stuff, it's also necessary for the studio's financial health. Now talking about production, more often than not, these early production don't adjust their deadlines at all, meaning that they are still brutal despite having no immediate need to. And why do that? Because no project exists on its own. We have a clear example with My Senpai is Annoying. Its production started and finished ages ago, but much of its team still had to turn in their work unreasonably fast. Why? Because that same team is already making another anime, Shikimori's Not Just a Cutie. Again, a studio like Dogakobo is undoubtedly a capable studio, but their inability to negotiate for good contracts has them picking up way more projects than is reasonable. Same goes for JC stuff. Under Fujishiro's production line, we can see that there are tons of anime that has been assigned to him. This has led them keeping multiple teams in this constant state of crunch. And even in cases when one of their individual titles lucks into a comfortable schedule, the lack of pivoting room for the studio as a whole essentially dooms that team's following project. Unfortunate domino effects like that are all over the industry, especially in the current scenario of widespread delays, which have been happening a lot more often than is publicly announced. Anime studios often work with different partners, which leads to a situation where one committee's proposed delay clashes with another's intended plan, and the latter refuses to budge. That's because production committee aren't really invested in the quality of the product beyond its marketability, nor in the well-being of the staff. And that's exactly what's happening with One Punch Man Season 3. It is being produced under Fujishiro's production line within JC Stuff, the same internal branch responsible for a long list of other anime, including all these. So when you look at that lineup, you can see how packed and overlapping Fujishiro's production schedule has been in recent years. So even though One Punch Man is a massive IP, it doesn't automatically mean it's treated as a top priority internally, because within JC Stuff, all these projects are handled under the same limited pool of time, staff, and resources. That's why even with such a profile title, since it's popular and all, it can still end up constrained by the same system that affects every other anime in that line. It's not a matter of talent or patience, it's a matter of the structure of the entirety of the production line. There are too many studios out there, and committees can always find someone else desperate enough to accept the show. So the system keeps cycling fast, cheap, disposable production over and over again, which is why you can see some anime getting studio change again and again, and the quality basically declines. You know, there's a comment I came across that really stuck with me that basically said, we always talk about how the production committees is the problem, but we never really guide fans on what to do about it. It just becomes a vent session, then everyone everyone ends up blaming the studio again? And honestly, that is a pretty good point. Because right now, the conversation around One Punch Man Season 3 feels stuck in this cycle. People points finger at JC stuff, then someone says, blame the committee. Then everything just resets. No one's really doing anything with that information. But here's the thing. Production committee, which is groups of companies like Bandai Namco, are the ones controlling budgets, schedules, and marketing direction. The studio like JC stuff just executes under whatever constraints they're given. Yes, you could argue that it's also part of JC stuff's fault for accepting One Punch Man despite the schedules that were given. But at the end of the day, there are other studios with the same desperation that will take on One Punch Man, and to be honest, we might actually get something worse than whatever JC stuff is delivering right now. Someone would question, why? Well, let me give you a scenario. If they actually switch studios, it will most likely end up under a worse one. Think about it. Imagine a project with such a bad schedule gets offered to JC Stuff, a studio known for taking tons of show under heavy workloads, and they reject it. That basically means the production conditions are so bad, even JC Stuff doesn't want to touch it. From there, it just gets passed down to a smaller or more desperate studio that will take anything just to stay afloat. So instead of constantly throwing the blame around, I think it's pretty important that we understand where these issues actually come from. The problem isn't about who's animating what or who the director is, it's about how the entire system operates. And honestly, I don't have the power to change how the anime industry works, so I can't really give a proper solution to this since it's way beyond what someone like me can do. But honestly, I'm just hoping that one day things can improve. That production gets handled in a way that both ensures the quality of the anime and improves the working conditions of the people behind the scene. Because at the end of the day, they are the one that keeps the medium alive. And as around, those are basically it for today's video. And yes, everything I've talked about in this video, from production details to official statements and industry insights, can be found in the description below if you want to check the sources yourself. And honestly, I just want to say thank you to everyone who actually watched until the very end. I know this was a pretty long one, but I really appreciate those of you who took the time to listen and try to understand what's actually happening behind the scenes. And yes, there are the other side where some people with short attention spans are just going to scroll down and type "Cope, lol, this episode is bad, stop defending," and all that, and that's fine. I can't control that. But I do want to clarify something, that it's not wrong to express your opinions. It's not wrong to criticize the anime or to point out flaws. Even I do it. What is wrong though is when criticism turns into hate or even misinformation. When people start repeating things they don't actually understand just because someone else with higher influence said it. That kind of bandwagon hate actually helps no one. You're just going into the path of misinformation and making yourself look dumb. But at the end of the day, this video isn't about defending or excusing how One Punch Man Season 3 is being treated. It's about understanding the reality behind it. That despite all the constraints and production struggles, the team still managed to deliver episode 1 with really solid drawing quality, and that deserves at least some respect. But hey, at the end of the day, not everyone watches until the end anyway, so if you did, comment down "Garo," just so I know you actually made it this far. And yes everyone, those are basically it. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let's just hope that the future episodes of One Punch Man Season 3 will look better than the episode 1. And yeah, thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next One Punch Man video. Goodbye.